And so, as are the building blocks of music, so are the building blocks of nature and life. Well, not entirely, but kind of. Let's talk about these building blocks. And now your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Hello, Matt.
Hello, Jeremy.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
We briefly touched in a very early episode, Melody and Harmony, we briefly touched on intervals and triads and chords. But let's have a little bit more of a lengthy discussion on exactly what the triad is, or the basic triad, shall we?
Yes, we shall. So, the textbook definition of a chord. A chord is a combination of any two or more intervals. A lot of people will sort of, at this point, add the phrase at the same time, played simultaneously, for example. Chord, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of true in a simple way. I mean, these are three notes representing two intervals, right? The space from one to the next, and then the space from the middle to the last. But you know, they don't necessarily have to be played simultaneously or as a block chord, if you will, like that, to be a chord. I mean, that is as much a chord as, you know, playing it simultaneously, you know.
Even though you're hearing the melody, the chord structure is implied.
Right,
by
because
the
I'm
distance
playing
between these notes.
Yeah, I'm playing those notes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing the notes of that chord. If I was to make the notes of that chord into a melody, no, it's still a chord. We can still talk about those three notes being grouped together sort of conceptually that way as that chord. They don't have to be played, you know, all together this way to be called a chord.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little thing, but it's one of those little things. People will tell you a chord is three notes played at the same time, and you know, if you start thinking about it that way, it might become confusing later on when that's no longer the case. It's just any combination of three or more notes that are grouped together for whatever reason. You know, actually, it's any combination of two or more intervals when you really get into it.
Yes. Cool.
So, and like intervals, chords have certain qualities. And by qualities, we typically mean major.
Happy.
Nice, happy sounding chord. Minor.
A little more serious.
Right? There's storm clouds gathering outside. Diminished.
I feel very tense all of a sudden.
Yeah, I feel very tense. This is the famous, I think of it as the railroad track chord. If you ever watch those old silent movies with the piano playing, this is when the damsel is tied to the railroad tracks by the villain. Right?
Yeah, fancy finger work there, Matt.
Yeah, no, not really. But so diminished, and then our last one is augmented.
I'm not even sure how augmented makes me feel.
You're right, exactly.
How does
augmented make you feel? How does augmented make us feel?
I guess we can get into that once we're going to talk about each of these chords one by one, right?
Yeah, we can, but it's also fun to talk about it now.
Yeah. How does it make you feel?
Like the pictures getting waving, we're about to start seeing a dream or a memory or a flashback. Flashback, that's what it is. It's like the flashback chord.
Yeah.
It was last year.
I know this is stuff we'll talk about later on, but is it kind of based on the whole tone? I noticed the whole tone scale has that feel,
has
that
flashback
disorienting
feel. Yes, and we will definitely talk about the whole tone scale at some point. But yes, it is definitely notes that come from the whole tone scale. It is what we would call a subset of the whole tone scale. Yeah.
Very good.
Good job.
Thank you.
I'm impressed.
All right then. Well, okay, so we kind of got the feel of them. Now let's talk about each one individually, shall we?
Let's do that. So what we're talking about here for the time being is triads, what we call a triad.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it a triad because there are three notes. That's what I've been playing the whole time is three notes. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. You know, any 3-note chord is considered a triad.
Also known as a tertian harmony, correct?
A tertian harmony. It's a similar concept, yeah. Tertian harmony doesn't have to have 3 notes. I mean, you can be stacking the interval of a third
Oh, so okay.
up and up and
so
up
in
and
a
up.
tertian harmony, you could have a chord that's not a triad. It could be many, many notes, but they're all a third apart.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
But a triad is a tertian harmony because we are sort of stacking thirds here a little bit.
So a triad will always be a tertian harmony, but a tertian harmony doesn't always have to be a triad.
Right.
Okay, copy.
Basically. So triads are composed of 3 notes, and in those 3 notes, there are 2 intervals. So we start with the note that we consider the root of the triad to be, the note that the triad will be built upon.
What note is that for people who want to play along?
I'm playing middle C at the moment.
We'll see.
And our 2 intervals above that are, let's say I'm going to play a major third above that C, so I'm going to play E. And I'm going to play a perfect fifth above that middle C, which is G.
You got a perfect fifth there.
Perfect fifth, and then a major third. Put them together. And we have a triad. In this case, this is a major triad, which is a major third and a perfect fifth above the root. Root, third, fifth. If I take a root, let's do something different. Let's do F this time. So this is the F above middle C. If I take that and then play, instead of a major third, I'm going to play a minor third above this F. So I'm going to play A flat. And then I'm also going to play a perfect fifth above this root, which is C. Put those together and you have a minor triad. So while a major triad is a major third and a perfect fifth above the root, a minor triad is a minor third and a perfect fifth above the root.
The only difference being the third between those 2 chords.
The only difference being the third, exactly. Minor triad, root, third, fifth. Minor third in this case. Yeah. A couple of more, a diminished triad, which which we've heard already. Remember the villain in the Silent movie with the train tracks? That is a root with a minor third and a diminished fifth, also known as a tritone, right? That's a tritone between D and A flat in this case.
Or a flattened fifth, I guess.
Right, flat fifth, diminished fifth.
Same difference.
Same difference. And then there's the augmented triad, the whole tone-based, nostalgic, flashbacky kind of thing, which is a major third above a root. And then an augmented fifth above that root.
Or the sharp fifth.
Or the sharp fifth. Or technically speaking, the raised fifth. I mean, if the fifth had been B flat, then it would be B natural, not B sharp. But yeah.
Sharpened fifth.
The sharpened fifth. Very nice. So you can also think of these, we were talking about tertian harmonies. You can think of these as stacks of thirds. Now you can also think of a major triad as a major third, and then stacked on top of that major third is a minor third. So you can think of a major triad as a major third with a minor third on top, whereas the minor triad is a minor third with a major third on top. Diminished triad is 2 minor thirds, and an augmented chord is 2 major thirds.
So let me make sure I got this here.
Okay.
So far, we've covered 2 ways to describe a triad. We talked about, the first way we talked about was a perfect fifth with a third within it.
Right.
Or a third, the combination of those 2.
Right.
But now another way to look at it would be actually the stacking of 2 thirds.
The stacking of thirds. And you will hear people talk about it that way. I don't necessarily like to think of it that way all the time. Because it's really important to recognize that there's a fifth in conventional triads. But you will hear people talk about it that way, so it's important to point that out.
Because in the case of the diminished and augmented chord, it's the fifth that really distinguishes the quality of the chord.
The major and minor triads are much more stable than a diminished or an augmented triad. And the reason for that is the perfect fifth that lies within those chords.
The frequencies are more complementary towards each other.
Right, yeah, because the perfect fifth does lie within the overtone series. There's an octave, the very first one in the overtone series, but
Oh, yes.
but you get the idea.
Mhm.
Right? So, okay. So what chords are major and what chords are minor? This is actually very important. You might want to get out some paper and write this down.
Got my paper?
Very
my
nice,
pencil?
very nice.
Click, click, click.
The the consummate student, Jeremy.
We're always students, right? We talked about that.
We're always students, and if you're as old as we are, you rely on your paper and your notebook. Where not your mini computer notebook. I mean, an actual notebook of paper. From Mead or somebody. That nobody uses anymore.
Well, Matt and I were talking before we started this podcast. I was thinking, wait, how would I get a keyboard command to find that diminished or half diminished symbol or
Right.
augmented? It's easy. That's just a plus sign. But yeah, I thought, well, I guess back then I just used my pen. I drew
We
a
just
circle.
actually drew stuff. And we had blank sheet music that you can get from your bookstore. By the way, if you've not bought blank sheet music from your bookstore yet, go buy blank sheet music from your bookstore. You're going to need it.
We keep dating ourselves.
We keep dating ourselves, yeah. But you're seriously going to need the blank sheet music. That's that's a thing that's going to have to happen.
And a pencil, I would say.
Yes. Nothing in pen. Believe me, you'll thank yourself for, being able to erase. But we digress. Okay, so here we go. About to blow your minds.
All right.
Any triad that is built with the root of C. Any triad that is built with the root of G. And any triad that is built with the root of F. All of these triads will be major if the accidentals match. So what I mean is C, E, and G, which would be C natural, E natural, and G natural, right, is a major triad. C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, major triad. C flat, E flat, G flat, major triad, right?
Everything changed at the same time and then went in the same direction.
Exactly, yeah. Same thing with the G. G double sharp, B double sharp, D double sharp. If those accidentals matched, then that is a major triad.
Ah.
Any chord built with the root of A, any chord built with the root of D, and any chord built with the root of E will be minor if the accidentals match. So E natural, G natural, B natural is a minor chord. E flat, G flat, B flat is a minor chord. A sharp, C sharp, E sharp, minor chord. And then, so that takes care of all of our basic notes except B. With a B chord, if the accidentals match, it will be diminished. So B sharp, D sharp, F sharp is a diminished chord. B, D, F is a diminished chord. It's a little bit of an outlier right there, and it's because of that diminished fifth, that tritone between B and F. So B, D, and F is a diminished chord. And that makes it a little more confusing to deal with than the rest of the triads.
Big bad B.
Big bad B, yeah. So
Big bad B.
So when the accidentals match, it is pretty easy to construct major or minor chords around matching accidentals. If somebody says, hey, play G major, well, all the accidentals match in G major, right? So G, B, D, easy. If somebody says, hey, can you play an E flat minor chord, well, all the accidentals match. E flat, G flat, B flat. Pretty simple, right?
Got it.
When the accidentals don't match, this is kind of when you've got to sort of engage your brain a little bit and figure out how to either build the chord you're being asked to build or identify the chord you're being asked to identify. So a minor triad with a raised third becomes a major triad. So, for example, I've got a minor triad that is D, F, and A. I remember this is a root of D, the third is F, and the fifth is A. If I take that third, F, and raise it to F sharp, I now have a major triad. D, F sharp, A.
Things are looking up.
Things are looking up. Yeah, it's getting a little better. Beethoven used to love to transition this way. Going from a major triad, and it would just lower the third.
Is it
and be in a different key. So he does that all the time.
Is that considered the Picardy third when you're lowering it from raising it, or is it the opposite?
It's the opposite. The Picardy third is when you're in a minor key, and then in the very end you raise the third of your last chord to make a Picardy third.
Okay, that was in the back of my mind somewhere. So that often happens at the cadence, kind of at a cadence, or at the end of a.
At the end of the piece.
At the end of the piece. Okay.
Yeah, it's usually all the way at the end of the piece. They had a thing against ending a piece on a minor chord that went all the way back to the Middle Ages.
So they just wanted to feel better.
They just wanted to
left.
leave and feel happy, I guess. Yeah, actually, I think it has to do with a minor third being considered a greater dissonance when you're talking about Middle Ages counterpoint. So it's too dissonant to end the piece on because you have to resolve out into consonants when you do that.
So they would. So I guess they would just kind of feel unresolved when they're going home, and therefore maybe they won't give as good a review of the performance.
Yeah,
or
you
the
can't
experience.
have that. Yeah, you can't have that. But yeah, good Picardy third.
1 5 1. But
yeah, doesn't that just make you feel better about the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, so a minor triad in which you have raised the third is a major triad.
Major triad.
Conversely, a major triad in which you have lowered the third is a minor triad. So if I take G, B, and D, major triad, right? One of our, all the accidentals match.
Mm-hmm.
So G, natural, B, natural, D, natural.
Yay.
Yep, root, third, fifth. If I take that third, B, and lower it to B flat, I now have G minor.
Aww. I say that, but I actually like the sound of minor chords better.
I actually always have myself. It's funny. It's funny. I wonder how many other people out there really sort of prefer minor chords and minor keys.
Maybe we can take a poll.
Maybe we should take a poll. I would be interested to know. So a major in which you have lowered the third becomes minor. A major chord, and I'll do F major this time. Root is F, third is A, fifth is C. If I raise that fifth C to C sharp, I now have F augmented. Takes you back, doesn't it?
Feels a little I feel a little disoriented. I guess that was the hardest part for me is when I was a student, trying to determine when I heard a diminished chord, it went major and minor, no problem, right?
Right.
You can kind of tell for the most part when you hear a minor chord or a major chord.
Yeah.
But the difference between and all these years later, it's coming to me now. Yes, the diminished chord is a little more tense. And a little more stressful, and then the augmented chord is just a little more almost floaty, disorienting,
yeah,
psychedelic, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, and you're not alone with the difficulties in distinguishing between diminished and augmented. A lot of people find those two to sound very similar.
And just so you know, we're probably going to get deeper into the differences and probably discuss it at more length when we get into the ear training.
Yeah, and
episode.
teach you how to tell the difference, which is what you really want to know, right?
Correct. So right now we're just discussing the theory behind chords, but we will talk a little bit we will have an episode about ear training.
Right, yeah. So a minor with a raised third is a major. A major with a lowered third is a minor. A major with a raised fifth is an augmented, and a minor with a lower fifth is a diminished. This is sort of the basic material we have to start building any quality chord, major, minor, diminished, augmented, on any root whatsoever. So, for example, if I ask you to build me a C minor chord, we know that if the accidentals match, C is going to be major, right? C, E, and G.
Correct.
If I want to make that major chord minor, I lower the third. C minor, C, E flat, and G. Also, if I wanted to make G flat diminished, for example. Yeah, so we know that G flat, if the accidentals match, is major. G flat, B flat, D flat. So how do we get to diminished? Well, if this is a major chord, we first have to lower that third to make it a minor chord. And then to make that minor chord diminished, we also have to lower that fifth. So I'm now playing G flat, B flat, and what might be written as D double flat, also known as C. So you sort of use this information to move up and down through the different qualities until you get whatever you want to build or whatever you want to identify. You know, when you're identifying chords, you see, G flat, you see G flat, B flat, and D on the, on the paper and say, well, what kind of chord is this? Well, you have to know that G, B flat, D flat, if the accidentals match, that was a major chord, but D natural means that they've raised the fifth. You know, it's just sort of thinking through what the process was. So, Jeremy.
Yes, Matt.
If I asked you for, let me think of a good one. If I asked you for A flat diminished, could you build me such a chord?
And earlier, Matt has assured me that there are no trick questions.
There are no trick questions.
In early music theory, right?
There are no trick questions. Only wrong answers.
Only wrong answers. Okay, now hit me one more time. You said A flat diminished?
A flat diminished. Build for me an A flat diminished triad. Think you could do that?
I might can. It might take a second. It might have to use some brain cells. As a bassist, a flat keys are not really... It's true, though. I would never sit there and intentionally write something in a flat key.
Sometimes you have to.
Yeah, I guess sometimes you need to, for different instruments, like certain brass instruments are in their natural state keyed in different keys, flat keys, B flats and E flats. Also, sometimes for certain vocalists, you'll need to transpose to different keys, I suppose.
Yeah. And there are times when, you're writing in B flat, for example. If you try to write that in A sharp major, that key signature is going to be, 4 sharps and 3 double sharps. Whereas 2 flats.
See how I was able to derail the conversation to give me time to think about how to build an A flat diminished chord? No,
Very tricky.
Seriously. No, so earlier we were talking about the A and how in its natural state, it is typically a minor chord, so A, C, E, if the accidentals match, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to take those and flatten all three, you'd have A flat, C flat, and E flat.
Indeed.
So you already have one ingredient of that chord we're talking about. We have the flattened third. The only thing we really have to do at this point would be to flatten that fifth. Therefore, providing the diminished fifth and the minor third necessary.
And now we have A flat diminished. A flat, C flat, and E double flat. Very good, Jeremy.
That's me patting myself on the back.
Very nice. Very nice. So, what else? What if I asked you for G minor?
G minor. Well, as we said, G is one of those chords that is in its natural kind of combination. If you add thirds to it, based on no other sharps or accidentals, it is a major chord.
If the accidentals match, it will be a major chord. So G, B, D.
So we have a major chord.
Chord.
You wanted to make that into a G minor.
We needed a G minor.
Then in that case, all we have to do is flatten the third, because in major and minor, the perfect fifth is the perfect fifth.
Right. So we flatten that third, and we have G, B flat, and D, also known as G minor.
Another fine chord.
Another fine chord. All right, so this next one's going to be a little tricky.
I'm ready.
What about B major?
B major, that's going to take some work.
It is going to take some work. B is always going to take more work, you'll find.
Big bad B wants to be in that diminished state.
Yes, so if the accidentals match, B is a diminished chord.
Okay, so in order to get from diminished to major, we have to do some work. Did you say major or augmented?
I said major.
Okay. So in order to get to that major, we have a little bit of work to do. We got to first off, let's go ahead and get that perfect fifth happening. Let's take that flat fifth and raise it a half step.
So now we have...
Now it sounds like a minor chord.
Yeah, now we have B minor, right?
So we have the minor third and the perfect
fifth, yeah. So we wanted B major.
So what's left to do would be to raise that third.
And now we have B major. Very good, very impressive.
All right.
It's always a little trickier to deal with B or B flat or B sharp because if the accidentals match, it's diminished, which is a little tricky. You have to do more work usually when it's any kind of B.
I think of B diminished as the ultimate leading tone thing. It's like all the notes can be a leading tone. That's one thing about diminished. Any note in a diminished chord could be the leading tone to what could be a tonic.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Or like a diminished seventh, I guess.
Typically, it's a fully diminished seven you're thinking about because it's all minor thirds. Any one of those notes could be considered the root of that diminished chord.
Yes.
Which means it could then lead to any chord that's a half step above any of those notes.
Right.
But that is totally like Theory 2, Theory 3 stuff.
A preview for you. But we digress.
Oh.
That's going to be our thing, I think. We're going to keep on saying
We're just going to keep digressing.
Yeah.
Until we're talking about, our favorite episode of The Sopranos or something.
What is your favorite episode of The Sopranos, Matt?
What is my favorite episode of The Sopranos? The one where like half the episode is Tony in a dream.
Ooh,
and it's like in season 5 somewhere or something. But yeah, that's like one of my favorites. The dream sequences in The Sopranos are better than the dream sequences in any other show.
Yeah, man.
They're just so awesome.
Anyway.
So with those materials, you can build a chord, build any kind of chord, any quality on any note. And like I said, identifying is the same process. You're just kind of sort of figuring out what happened rather than doing it yourself. If I gave you the notes F sharp, A, and C sharp, and say identify the quality of that chord, think we could do that, Jeremy?
F sharp, A, and C sharp?
F sharp, A, C sharp.
Well, I can tell right now, just because I have all the ear training, that you need all the years of ear training you need to tell a major chord from a minor chord.
That's a minor chord.
I can tell it's a minor chord.
That is, in fact, a minor chord. F sharp, A sharp, C sharp would be major. If the A sharp is instead a natural, then we have minor, right?
Yes.
So let's see. What about A sharp, C sharp, and E? And I'm not going to play it this time.
Oh, you dog. We have an A sharp, a C sharp, and an E.
Right.
So I know, first off, if it was A, C sharp, and E sharp, then we'd have ourselves a minor triad.
Right.
But now that E is natural, so it's been flattened from from where it wanted to be. And there we therefore have a diminished.
So if I played A sharp, C sharp, and E, this is going to be a diminished triad.
Yes.
Very good. So that's sort of the brain process behind all this. And it gets easier the more you do it. In fact, you get to the point where you just kind of know this stuff. You're not really paying attention that well.
And obviously it's kind of like riding a bicycle, but not entirely, because it took me a little longer than if I was just to jump on a bicycle. But just you exercise these little these muscles, right?
Yeah, you kind of got to use it or lose it.
Yeah.
And it's thinking about things in theory can be a different skill set from playing them on an instrument. Those two skill sets inform each other definitely, but when you're playing bass or guitar or something, you know the fingering position for a diminished chord, so you don't have to think too much about what actual notes you're playing. At least I don't. I don't know. But because in this case, you're having to think about actual notes. Gets a little confusing, but just like your instrument, all it takes is practice.
It takes a little bit of the fun out of it, but it's also a necessary thing. It's a necessary skill to...
Well, it takes the fun out of it until you can get to the point where you're just picking random notes and trying to figure out what it is. When you go, let's see, that's a G minor sus4, and with you can put a minor seventh on it, and now it's, when you get to that stage, the fun comes back, right?
Man can do great things with that chord.
Oh, yeah. It's an awesome chord. You could actually also think of that chord as second inversion C7. Like if I added the E.
Which we'll talk about.
Which we'll talk about later.
Later on.
But we digress.
As we do.
We do digress.
I mean, I think that kind of covers it. Is there anything else you would want to impart?
Just one quick little thing. These chords are related back to the notes we talked about in the scales a lot. We're starting to really have most of the materials we need to start thinking about harmony really soon here. So just as when we go back to a major scale, for example, and I'm just going to play a C major scale. And remember, we called C the first note of that C major scale, the tonic. You also you will also hear it called scale degree 1. If we take that scale degree 1 and create a triad using notes from the C major scale,
all the white keys,
all natural notes,
natural, yes.
Then we have C, E, and G, which we know is a C major triad. Right, that's an easy one. And that will be called the Tonic Triad, because it's built off scale degree 1, which is the tonic. You also hear it called a 1 chord built off scale degree 1, right? If we use notes from the key of C major and build, a chord based off scale degree 2, then you'll notice we have D natural, F natural, and A natural. We have a minor chord, and this is often called the supertonic chord, because it's built off the supertonic scale degree, or scale degree 2. You'll hear it called a 2 chord. And in a major key, it is a minor chord, as you can hear. So tonic chord, 1 chord is major, 2 chord is minor, and these are called diatonic triads, because I am taking notes from my C major scale to build these triads.
And in this case, only the notes from the C major scale.
In this case, only the notes from the C major scale. If we keep going up, the 3 chord, the mediant chord, also minor. The subdominant chord, also known as the 4 chord, you'll notice is major again. At this point, we are at F, A, and C. And so is the dominant chord, G, B, and D, right? The submediant chord, A, C, and E, is again minor. And then we have our nice little diminished chord that is built off of this B, which is the leading tone chord, which is diminished. And then we're back. So the 1 chord is major, the 2 chord is minor, the 3 chord is minor, 4 and 5 are major, and 6 is minor, and 7 is diminished, quality-wise, if we use nothing but diatonic triads, triads that are built on the notes that we have available to us from the C major scale.
So the fundamental chords based on the notes of the C major scale.
Absolutely. And that's basically it. There's another one for minor scales, in which the tonic is minor, and then the 2 is actually diminished, and then the 3 is major, 4 and 5 is minor, 6 is major, and 7 is major.
It's almost flipped, except for that 2 and the 7.
Almost, yeah. It's actually knocked down 2 places, right? If you think about your scale as sort of being on a giant clock, the way I do.
Yeah,
but maybe I'm just insane.
That's a good way to look at it. I never thought about that. You are insane, but
I am totally insane, but
that's
still can be a good way to look at it. And that's pretty good. You can pretty much build triads at this point.
Wonderful. So, should we just do a quick review?
Let's do a quick review.
So a major chord.
A major chord is a major third and a perfect fifth.
Probably one of the more consonant of the chords.
Probably the most consonant triad.
Yeah.
You know, it has to have at least 3 notes to be a chord. 2 notes is just an interval.
Right.
So, yeah, probably the most consonant triad. Most consonant chord.
And the minor chord.
Minor chord is a minor third and a perfect fifth above a root. And diminished chord is a minor third and a diminished fifth, also known as a tritone, above a root.
I wonder if it feels stressed because it's so diminished.
It must feel
When I get
stressful.
diminished, I feel stressed.
Yeah.
People diminish me.
Yeah. Being diminished is stressful.
But when people augment me, I'm not used to that, and I feel a little bit surreal.
That's surreal. Yeah.
Talk about the augmented
That is,
chord.
of course, a major third and an augmented fifth, a raised fifth.
Well, I think that was a pretty ample discussion on triads, or the basic triads, rather.
Yes, indeed. And in the future, we will be going on beyond the triad into seventh chords and extended harmonies.
Scary but fun stuff.
I can't wait.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for listening.
Now that you know the theory, keep listening, and we'll tackle ear training for basic triads in the near future. For questions or comments, email us at info@musicstudent101.com.